to entrepreneurs, companies, and governments. She is also revered as a role model for women and immigrants and celebrated for her empowering message on inclusivity. Ms. Nooyi has been awarded the Padma Bhushan, India's third highest civilian honor, and the US State Department's award for Outstanding American by Choice. She has received 15 honorary degrees, including an honorary doctorate of humane letters from Yale University in 2009. She also serves on the boards of Amazon and the International Cricket Council. Ms. Nooyi is married to Raj Nooyi and has two daughters, Preetha and Tara. She has written a book, My Life is Full, which is the story of an extraordinary leader's life, a moving tribute to the relationships that created it and a blueprint for 21st century prosperity. I'm extremely delighted to have Ms. Nooyi with us today and can't wait to hear from her during the next 1 hour or so. I encourage our students to write questions that I can field to her during the course of the talk as well. So just as we start off, ma'am, I thoroughly enjoyed reading your book over the past few days and look forward to hearing from you. What are some of the lessons that you learned through your highly illustrious career that young students entering the workforce can look forward to learning from your experience?
Great. Srivat, thank you very much for having me speak to the Jaipuria University, Jaipuria Institute of Management students. I have to say that I've never given a talk where I've had so many good evening ma'ams in the chat. So thank you to all the students for making me feel so welcome. Let me start off by saying the fact that you're at the Jaipuria Institute of Management says you must be very, very good students and future leaders of the country, future business leaders of the country. So you've already crossed the first big hurdle. Now let me talk about what you really need to focus on as you go through your journey in business or politics or whatever you choose to do. And I'm going to spend some time talking about this because I think it's important that you start to work on these early in your life as opposed to waiting till you reach a middle management or senior level before you work on these. The first thing that you all need to make sure you work on is your proposition. What is it that you're good at that everybody in the company says, Dhruti is very good at this. If there's this sort of a problem, go to her. Or somebody says, do you want to solve this issue? Ruchi is the best at it. So each person has to have a proposition. And if you don't understand what it is that proposition is and is going to be, and constantly enhance it through what I call curiosity, looking to see how you can expand your proposition, looking to see how you can deepen your proposition, what happens is you become just another employee. So the first thing, focus on what your proposition is and how you enhance it with curiosity. The second thing that you need to work on, and you've got to start now, is creativity. The world requires creative solutions. And creativity, I know some people believe you're born with creativity. I actually don't think so. I think some people may be born with inherent creativity, but creativity can also be learned. All that you have to do is look at creative people, understand what makes them, be so creative. Try to connect dots that didn't exist and say, what kind of shapes come up? Look at innovators and see, how can they be so creative? How do they find opportunities that we missed? So constantly look at the outside, be curious, and develop your sense of creativity. Very, very important. The third skill, very badly needed, is a combination of courage and confidence. You can be somebody with a fantastic proposition, the most creative person, but you don't have the courage or the confidence to stand by what you're doing. People are going to think you're a wimp. And nobody follows a leader who doesn't have courage and projects their courage through a confident demeanor. So for those of you who don't give firm handshakes, for those of you who don't give eye contact when you meet somebody, for those of you who are not willing to communicate your message in a powerful way with courage and confidence, you've got to go to work on those skills. Please, it's critically important, which brings me to the fourth related skill, communications. And I have to tell you, and I speak for Indians as a group, many of us have communication skills. Either we swallow words or our brain thinks too fast and therefore we speak too fast. And we are yet to be taught how to communicate in a pithy way in a way that causes people to create shapes around what you're talking about. And so go on the YouTube and look at all the great communicators. Look at General Patton and this Patton and the speech he gave. Look at President Obama and the speeches he gave. There is a great civil rights leader in the US called Vernon Jordan who passed away. Watch his speeches. Listen to Martin Luther King's speeches, the few that exist on film. Just the text itself does not inspire anybody, but the way he talked about it, the way he stood, the way he repeated certain lines, the way he enunciated words, all make a difference. Leaders have to make people follow them all the time. And it doesn't matter if you're managing 3 people or 3,000 people or 300,000 people. You've got to have an incredible sense of communication to mobilize those people to follow you to places where they never thought they needed to go. So communication. The next skill, which is critically important for any leader, is what I call your compass or your integrity. Integrity is a 0 or 100 thing. Either you have integrity or you don't have it. If somebody says, Nidhi is about 50% integrity or Alok is about 60% integrity, that means it's 0 integrity. You might think, hey, I only committed 2 acts of, that might question my integrity, but to the world, you lack integrity. And remember, whatever you do is because of the digital world and social media, don't think anything is secret. Everything is going to be out in the public. So behave as if every action you take is going to be in the public domain. And make sure that there's integrity in everything you do. The moral code of your life should be absolutely impeccable. The next one, number 6, is coaching. Any leader is a leader because they coach and develop the next generation of leaders. A leader who is only for himself or herself and does not develop succession is really not a leader. They're just a worker. So being a coach and developing people requires you to be secure, requires you to say, I don't mind if my job goes away because I coach somebody to do it better than I can do, because I'm going to develop myself to move on to the next bigger job. So you've got to coach, be a great coach. And the final thing, and very relevant in the Indian context, is citizenship. The country needs leaders who care about the country. The country needs people who worry about how to improve communities, how to improve the plight of the underprivileged, how to address the big issues that face India. If business leaders turn a blind eye to all of those issues and just focus on making the almighty buck at all costs, that is a waste of a great management education you've had. So please think about citizenship as something that's very, very important to all of you business students who've been privileged to go to a great institute of management and get a degree. Give back to the country, give back to your communities, give back to your states and your cities, because if all of you do that, the country itself will be better. So summarizing, the first is your proposition enhanced with curiosity, being creative, having courage and confidence, communicating anything you want to in a powerful way, a learned skill, develop it, having a compass that always points true north, having integrity that's impeccable, coaching others, and then having a deep sense of citizenship. So you worry about how to make the country and your community, in a better place than when you first had a part in shaping it.
Thank you so much. I think you have so well laid out the skills that are important for success at each level, irrespective of where you are in the organization. As you look back at your student days at IIM or at Yale, can you think of some incidents or some habits that probably formed in you, which gave you these skills, which gave you confidence, which gave you creativity, which gave you the ability to communicate? So what are some of those things that as students, our students can form, which will lead them to develop some of the skills that you've developed over your career?
Yeah, actually, a lot of it started for me in school, because I went to a convent school in Madras, and the nuns, the Irish nuns, took a special interest in my sister and me. And many evenings, they would pull us aside and say, come talk to us because we're going to teach you diction. And they would teach us how to say V and W and J, enunciate every alphabet the right way. And when you say very, very, how do you fold your lip in and say it as opposed to very, very? I mean, I can't tell you how many things they worked with us on, because our local language makes you talk a certain way. And the way English is spoken has got to be done a different way. So for those who haven't had the privilege of those sorts of mentors who worked with you to improve your communication skills, for those that haven't had a chance to be on debating teams, I was on a debating team all my life. It's not too late to start. I tell you one thing, Shrivats, when I was at Yale, to graduate from the first year and go to the second year, we had to pass an oral and written communications course. I failed the first attempt. One, because my writing was too filled with sort of big words that really didn't simplify the message. And second is when I spoke too fast. Many of us in India speak fast. So I grew up in that culture, especially in the South, where we speak very fast. And, I was making speeches or conveying messages, and my brain was racing at a speed, and I tried to keep track of my brain's movement, and words sometimes came out garbled. They taught me how to write in a clear way by first drawing the map of what it is I wanted to say, then drawing, then writing the text. And they also taught me how to think differently so that I could make a speech that was sensible and understandable by everybody. And so I think, to be honest, this is a great skill that should be taught in business schools, because at the end of the day, you're developing leaders of tomorrow. They are going to be leading people, and they are going to need communication skills, both written and oral communication skills. So if you can get a great communications coach, you've got to get a really good one. Don't get a bad one so that people feel they took the course but didn't improve. But little things like, I'll give you another example, Srivat. Our daughters, when they started in school, right from first grade, the minute they walk in every morning, the teacher would stand straight at the entrance, and each kid had to shake the teacher's hand and say, "Good morning, Mrs. Gilson," and walk in. And if the handshake was wimpy or the kid didn't give the teacher eye contact, they had to go to the top of the line again, the back of the line, and come back in. These are little things that are taught when children are small. But now I think what we should do is we need to retool people who haven't had those experiences or those skills taught to them and say, let's teach people how to give a firm handshake. Don't break somebody else's hand in shaking, but give a firm handshake and look at them in the eye, eyeball to eyeball, to say that you're confident, you have courage. So these are all things that make a huge difference.
Absolutely. I think when you talk about debating, it resonates back to my own college where I debated at NYU, and it's the thing I remember most about college.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
So it's about going outside the classroom and not only getting your grades, but actually taking initiative to hone in the skills that are available through any college experience and outside of that as well.
Which also means that the time you spend binge watching TV shows or playing video games, you may have to cut it back to go do some of these other things. Yeah.
Absolutely. In the skills, you talked about citizenship, and in your book, you talk about how PepsiCo was revolutionized through performance with purpose. So can you talk about how performance, whether in an individual context or an organizational context, can actually go along with purpose or with citizenship, and how those two can actually help each other in a virtuous cycle?
Yeah, the thing is, very often people think purpose or ESG are value destroying or just a distraction. Okay. The interesting thing is when we frame performance with purpose, it was framed in a way that if you didn't deliver on purpose, you couldn't deliver performance. And if you didn't deliver performance, you couldn't fund purpose. It was a virtuous circle. So the way our purpose program was framed was, what are the big mega trends that are going to be facing PepsiCo over the next decade or two, the food and beverage industry and PepsiCo, and what do we need to do to remain successful while these megatrends were reshaping our industry? So in a way, our purpose agenda was derived from a vision of the future, a view of the future, and deciding what it is we need to do to retool the company today to be successful in the future. So because it was framed in a how to sustain a performance way, as opposed to how to just do good in society, we could link performance and purpose. So nobody felt like we were sacrificing performance with purpose. What we were doing in reality, Srivat, is investing some in our future capabilities. And those future capabilities gave people a great sense for the company. So again, I'd go back to all of the discussions on ESG goals. I would take the ESG goals and break them down to which ones are truly shareholder value creating. For example, if somebody says one of your ESG goals is that you have to provide better benefits for your employees, part of your S goal, you're not doing it because you want to destroy shareholder value. You're doing that because if you didn't do it, you wouldn't be able to attract the best and brightest and keep them in your company. So again, you have to think about what is it that's important to keep the company performing well. All right. But on the other hand, you said, I'm just going to make all the money and give some money to some charitable causes which have nothing to do with the company. Then you say, okay, it's good to give for charity, but it's not really value creating for the company. So you've got to be very discriminating in terms of the choice of metrics, what you focus on, and how ultimately it lands on either a way to de-risk the company or create value immediately.
Absolutely. I was very interested when I was reading the book, just as, sort of you showed that there's no dichotomy between purpose and performance.
Right.
One of the things I learned a lot from the book was that they're almost, you seem to show that there's not a dichotomy for being there with your family and performing in your career. You showed during the book that many times, because you had the strength of your relationship with your family, that helped your career. In times when young people are talking about work-life balance, how do we make sure that we are successful at work and successful in having a supporting family, and how can we marry those two in a way that helps us succeed at both?
I actually believe when you have a family and a support structure around you, it makes you a wonderfully multi-dimensional person. Otherwise, what happens is you're unidimensional, you're driven by just the job. Your whole self-worth is defined by the job, and you become sort of a machine rather than a holistic person. And very often when people don't have families, don't have any ecosystem around them to really be a support for them, they treat their people badly too, because they think everybody else should work like they do and should be divorced from any interests outside the company, et cetera, et cetera. So I think putting family at the center of future of work and thinking about how young people can actually have families, have children, have a support structure, live in multi-generational families, if that's important. How to make all that happen, but not add to the stress that people go through anyway. So I think the future leaders are going to have to think about the role of families very differently. I think every country needs a population growth, without which we will have a problem. When the birth rate goes down significantly, the future is not in great shape. So I'd say the only way you're going to do it is to not talk about family as a burden, but talk about family as it's a tether, but it's a beautiful tether. And think about family creation as important to the future of the country, the future of your employee base. And therefore, companies have to worry about family creation all the time. And then provide the support structures to employees to make it happen. It's interesting. India has a lot of laws on the books that help that. But whether those laws actually become reality, I don't know. That's for you guys to decide. But India is one of the most progressive countries when it comes to laws to support maternity and paternity care and paid leave and things like that. We just need to make sure it's realized.
And even outside of family, I think in the book, you talk about the great relationships you formed. I think at one point you said, I have friends across time zones who I'm extremely close to. You talked about, mentors, friends, your old bosses who you kept up with. So how does one, create time for all this in what was obviously a very successful and very busy career?
Again, Shrivas, remember the time that I was developing and growing into my jobs? There was no internet. In India, there was no TV at that time, right? There were just libraries, just a few of them. Books are very expensive, so you never bought them, you borrowed them. And I grew up in a family where going to movies was considered a waste of money. So we rarely went to movies, and we never went out much because we were not wealthy. We decided that, just going out and spending money wastefully wasn't useful. And there was a lot of discipline at home where we were encouraged to read, debate, discuss. It was a very different environment. Some people might say, oh my God, must have been a boring life. Au contraire, I think I learn more in that process. So when you have that sort of an environment that you're growing up in, you have more time than when you're always worried about, did I miss the next show? Did I miss the last episode of the show? Oh man, I could have binge watched 2 other TV shows. There are 3 more game releases that have come out. I have to play it. Young people today have many, many more distractions, many more. They're tired not because of the job. They're tired because of the many, many distractions that they focus on. And if you actually shut down your social media, you shut down all of that and focused on, smelling the roses and interacting with humanity, life would be so much better. Really.
Absolutely. I think once we prioritize something, I think the message is once you prioritize something, you make time for it. Like, the time for it appears. And it's just about how much mind space and priority we give it in our lives.
Exactly right.
So, of course, in the book, you've talked about breaking the glass ceiling, about not only succeeding as a woman, but creating a path for other women to succeed and what organizations should do. As vice chairman of Jaipuria, I attend many convocation ceremonies, and I see the vast majority of people getting the awards and medals are women. Far more than 50%, maybe 70 or 80% of the students getting medals are women. What should we do, as young people starting out in organizations to make sure that women get an equal opportunity to be represented throughout the organization and in leadership positions, so that their talent pool can be fully utilized for the organizations as well.
And Srivatsa, here I want to just caution everybody. What we're talking about is having the best talent bubble up to the top, the best talent. And even if you're not the best talent, as you enter over time, you can become an awesome talent. Okay. Some people will tell me that these days only women get promoted, the men don't. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I think the best talent ought to bubble up. And you shouldn't care whether they're men or women. Don't discriminate against women because they're women. Because women are, as you said, getting all the top grades, the top medals. They're hungry to have economic freedom. They're doing very well. They're studying hard. They're studying really hard because they want to have the power of the purse. They want to be independent and stand on their own 2 feet because they've watched people in their family being held down and not be able to realize their dreams. And many parents today want their young girls to dream and soar and, rise to be somebody. So my only point is, let's focus on the talent pool as a whole. Here comes the first issue. People just say family is female. So if somebody gets married and has a kid, you go, oh, that's a woman's problem. No, it's not. It's both husband and wife's problem. In my case, my husband and wife took care of our kids jointly. Our responsibility was, divided equally. He had a full-time job. I had a full-time job. We just, sorted out our life by coordinating our schedules. That's what we should be teaching men and women. That family is family. Family is not female. And the country benefits if the best brains can contribute to the country. But it also helps if the best brains have kids and bring them up the right way. So the question is, how do you co-opt your extended family? How do you co-opt a childcare system, either funded by the company or shared funding with the employee? But in some shape or form, encourage young family builders to have kids, have families, and also contribute to the paid workforce. The great thing about COVID is technology has developed to a point where you can do some remote working. Okay, and so with some sort of a remote or hybrid work structures, people can now share in child rearing while also keeping a job. But if it falls disproportionate to the woman and say, you stay at home, I'm going to the office, the men say, I'm going to the office, that's not a very good outcome. So I think it's all, the whole there's got to be a mind shift on the part of men also to say, this is a joint responsibility. A joint responsibility.
Absolutely. I think very rightly so. The other striking thing again, that I read from your book, one always thinks that, if you put in the hard yards early on in your career, things seem to get easy. And one thing that struck me when I read your book is, as you grew in your career, you got more and more responsibility, probably faster than you had anticipated, and you became more and more busy. So how do you keep motivating yourself in that scenario, as you are growing more and more busy and getting more and more responsibility, becoming responsible for more and more people in a larger part of the organization?
So Shrivas, I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem because, as you grow in a corporate organization, the pyramid becomes narrower and narrower. So everybody cannot get to the top, only few get to the top. I think those that are self-motivated are wired in a way that says, I love this, let me study more about this. I have to read 3 other things that link to the subject I'm working on. People who are inherently curious, people who have the courage, who have the confidence, who really want to make a difference to their jobs, they are moved up. If people walk into a job and says, I want that next job as fast as possible, ambition crowds your performance. And that's the worst kind of person you can have. People who put themselves ahead of the company are also the worst kinds of people to have in a company. You want leaders who put the company before themselves. Okay, they want the company to succeed, not necessarily get the credit. Okay, they help other people do well. For example, I've come in contact with a lot of people. When they are doing a project that's going to have their name, they do a fantastic job. But when they have to do something for their bosses or help people around them, they do a so-so job and always have excuses why it didn't work so well. Doesn't work that way. In fact, I would do it the opposite way. Make the assignments that you work with other people way better than what you would do on your own, because it's about the company and the business. So leadership is a level of unselfishness, Shrivat. And you have to practice that starting very early in life. Helping others, coaching others. When you're working on something, including others. Teaching people who don't understand what you're saying. It's that constant working with others and developing others that's a critical part of leadership.
Absolutely. I think the key word that you said is self-motivation.
Yep.
Because you can tell a person who's self-motivated from a person who's not very quickly, and those are the kinds of people that tend to do well.
Absolutely.
In organizations. And it's about looking at long-term goals for yourself and not short-term ones. So you don't have to necessarily look out for whether this piece of work that you're doing today is going to get recognized. But if you put in the work, it will get recognized at some point for sure.
Yeah. Have ambition. Ambition is good, but don't have blinding ambition that sort of creates chaos in the company.
Absolutely. So we have a lot of great questions from students. I'm going to just read their names and read some of them.
Okay.
So Aman is asking, what should I see in the company that I am thinking of joining? How do I decide what sector or what company I should work for? So while I'm choosing a company, how important is that choice? What are some of the markers I should see whether this is a company that I want to be part of?
The first thing is Aman's going to decide for himself what he's interested in. Okay. But leaving the industry he's interested in out of the picture, if you really want to sort of vet a company, in the early days, you really want to vet whether they give you a good development and coaching opportunities, and they stretch you in terms of assignments that they put you in. You also want to know if you're going to be assigned to somebody who is actually going to look out for your career development. And is there a record of taking young graduates and putting them in stretch assignments and testing their limits of their ability? If it's a company with a very well-defined militaristic hierarchy, that's a slow grind. But if it's people who perform and they're jumped up 2 layers, it's like a double promotion, then it's an environment that might be good for you. Again, for each job in each company, you have to first ask yourself, who am I? What do I want from life? If you're the kind that says, I think I can actually enter 2 levels above what I am, I think I can do the job, not in a blinding, ambitious way, but in a sensible way, then you need a boss who can observe you, see your potential and move you along. So vet the company more in terms of its people practices, and then the choice of industry is completely up to you.
I think another sort of related question, like how far down the career should you be thinking about yourselves? So Anil is asking for you, ma'am, have you thought of what you became today? Did you think about that in your 20s? And I think there's a larger question there, should you be thinking about, I want to be CEO of a large consumer brand when you're in your 20s, and what are the steps that will lead me to that? Or should you be thinking about getting the right job or the right training and doing the best of it right now? Or can you think about both sides?
It's just the latter. If you start thinking, even at 20s or 30s or 40s, that I want to be CEO, you'll become so consumed by the CEO job. Every promotion or lack of a promotion upsets you. Don't let that happen to you. Focus on doing the job that you have exceedingly well. And make sure you're watching people 2 levels above you to see how they're doing the job, how they're adding value to the company. And constantly think about how you can add value to the company more than just the job you're doing. And if you put the company before you and think of the future of the company constantly, as opposed to, you get a raise and 3 months later, you're back in the HR office saying, I need another raise. Or when is my next promotion? I tell you one thing, it was having sat in so many people assessment meetings, those people that are constantly asking for a raise or a promotion, and I hate to say it, Srivats, they tend to be more men. Women rarely ask for it. Drives people up the wall. Drove me up the wall. We just gave the guy a raise. Yeah, but 6 months later, he's back saying, I want another raise. When is my next promotion? Those people just don't go too far. So you've got to, I'm not saying you shouldn't ask for a raise or promotion if you deserve it and you've been passed over. That's not what I'm saying. Let your work speak for yourself. And if your work is not being noticed, figure out a different environment where it can be noticed. And if you're being overlooked for some reason, then go make the case for yourself. But don't make promotions and raises every 3 months or 6 months the only conversation you have with HR. Absolutely. You're labeled as just a troublemaker.
So in your 20s, you didn't think that you were going to be CEO of PepsiCo?
Oh God, I didn't even imagine what a CEO would be. That's just not even in my imagination. So the day before I was told I was going to be CEO, I didn't know I was going to be CEO. So let's just be clear here.
So I think the idea that you're giving is to look up, 1 or 2 steps down and see how you can develop the skills, how you can contribute to the company to achieve the next 1 or 2 steps, and not look too far ahead, or you'll be consumed by that thought.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, remember, to reach the top rung of a ladder, you have to go rung at a time. Absolutely. If you keep looking at the top rung and climbing up, you will have a slip.
Absolutely. So in your book, you talked about, some of the great mentors or friends you had. And Saloni is asking, what if I don't have a mentor? How do I find one? Like, how should I identify that this is someone I want to be mentored by, and, approach them?
Mentors find you. You don't find them. You can't go to somebody and say, can you mentor me? Because unless you're working around you or a boss or somebody in a position of power, they can't do much for you. So your work should attract mentors. People look at you and go, man, this person has got a great work ethic, produces a great product, puts the company before anything else. I'd like to mentor this person because I think this person is going somewhere. And even if that person has not yet begun to start their ascent, I want to promote them and, advocate for them so that they move ahead. So mentors pick you. I have never in my life gone to somebody and said, will you mentor me? Never. People just came out of the woodworks and decided to mentor me. I didn't even know they were mentoring me until, well after the event or the act that they did, where I would find out that they told 10 people how good I was. And rarely did those people tell me that I was good. That was another bizarre thing. They never gave me a performance appraisal which said, you're really good. But they told other people I was good. And so I think that good work, putting the company before you, and having clarity in the way you write, think, communicate, would actually get you very far.
So I think the message is clear that your work should stand out, and the mentor will find you if your work stands out.
Absolutely.
So I think we've spoken a lot about, successes and the habits of success. Avinash is asking, how do you handle bad times when nothing goes in your favor? How do you handle? So I think there are a lot of questions around failure and losing confidence during failure. So I'm sure during a career, you would have faced many of such times. How did you handle them and come out stronger for them? What is the advice for youngsters as they handle failure at various levels?
If you don't have failures, Srivats, then you're not going to become a better person. Because in many ways, failures, things that don't go the way you planned them to, attacks that come on you, force you to pause and think, what could I have done differently? What did I do wrong? What did the company do wrong? How did we do something wrong in thinking about the process? Whatever it is. I think if you use every failure and setback as a teachable moment, as a learning moment, and really pause and think about what went wrong, rather than get bogged down by what happened, look forward. How can I make sure this problem doesn't happen again? Now, you have to spend the time grieving. Don't get me wrong. You do have to spend the time grieving. We're all human after all. But don't get completely swallowed by grief. Learn from the past, learn from the mistakes, and look forward to say, how do I make sure this doesn't happen again? Because if you make the same mistake again and again, shame on you. So any mistake that has led to a failure, think hard. Now, sometimes people say, I worked so hard, I should have gotten the next promotion and didn't get it. The third time I've been passed over. Then pause and ask yourself the question objectively. Am I being passed over because of something I'm not doing? Or am I being passed over because people just don't see me as a leader? Or am I being passed over because the company is just not ready for a woman leader, something like that? In which case, you either retool yourself or you find another company that's welcoming of you. Okay, so you have to think through carefully what's causing this problem before you come to a solution.
Absolutely. Is there a moment in your life or your career that you want to share that, was a moment that probably you felt that you had failed or circumstances that failed you, and how you came out stronger from that?
Shivat, there were many, many, many things like that. Remember, when you're a CEO, you're in the public eye, right? And what you think is the right thing for the company or what you're doing may not be viewed that way. And people push back, people attack you, people write about you, people write saying, does she really know what it is to be a CEO? You get very, very nasty feedback. And in each of those cases, you sit back and you go, let me separate out the noise from the facts. Okay? If there's just noise, you have to learn to face it. They always pick CEOs who are resilient, all right? So they see how you handle past failures before they hand you the CEO job. Okay, so you have to face up to these crises. You've just got to look at the failures and straight in the eye and say, okay, I'm going to learn from it and move forward, all right? And the real thing is, do not communicate to others that you're scared when you're a leader, because nobody likes to see a scared leader. So in face of this enormous challenges and problems, you've got to project confidence. Sometimes I'd go into the bathroom attached to my office and talk to myself, talk to my image in the mirror, because I didn't know who else to talk to. But you've got to develop your own coping mechanisms.
Absolutely. And I personally feel that, even sharing failures amongst your group of friends or family makes you feel that, it's okay to fail. And sometimes we only talk about success. And when we're in failure, we feel very alone, feeling that I'm the only person that's failed. So
the only thing Srivats to be careful about is sometimes when you have lots of problems, when you come home and want to share them all, people just go, God, it's boring to hear about. So you've got to balance it carefully. Okay.
Absolutely. Arpan is asking, how important is empathy as a skill for a leader? And sometimes if leaders are too empathetic, can they be looked upon as biased or weak? And how do you show empathy in leadership at the best way, I guess?
Well, you can be empathetic and firm. You don't have to be empathetic and soft. You can be empathetic and firm. You can be empathetic and a great leader by projecting confidence. You can do all of that. Empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is just understanding the needs the concerns of employees and figuring out the right way forward. Empathy doesn't say you're empathetic towards your people, you give them everything you want. That's not what it says. Empathy is just showing some feelings. Empathy is listening to people and saying, I hear what you're saying. Empathy is a difficult skill for exactly the reason you asked me the question, which is people equate empathy with sympathy. And they equate empathy with being a pushover and giving employees whatever they want. That's not what empathy is. Empathy is just a feeling, a skill. And if you have to practice empathy, if you want to hold on to your employees, especially post-COVID, where people are so unsettled. If you don't show compassion, if you don't show empathy, people are going to say, why should I come to work with this company? All the money in the world won't let me come to work in company X because those managers are just robots. You have to practice compassion and empathy.
So in the last question, we talked about failure. And, Himanshu Mishra is asking, handling failure is one thing, but what are some of the pitfalls in handling success? How do you make sure that success doesn't go to your head and you remain humble and approachable?
That's a great question. That is a great question because the fact that you're a CEO is a success. Not even CEO. Every time you get a small promotion or a small reward is a success. I think most people should realize that just as you got your success, you could also get a failure. So don't brag too much about your success because, as they always say, pride comes before a fall. You've got to be very, very careful that you don't walk around boasting and wearing a big crown on your head. As I say, and many, many times, when my mother told me to leave my crown in the garage, when I became president and I was wanting to brag about it, it was not just the garage. Her basic point is, yeah, I understand there's a crown, but just tone it down. Okay, it's like with that power comes humility. I think it's very, very important that you should celebrate your victories. Don't get me wrong. When you've had successes, celebrate them. Just celebrate them for a little while and get on to the next challenge. Some people want to throw themselves a big party and say, I got promoted, is a big deal, and go around telling everybody, walking around with 2 staff people to show that you're now a very important person. Why? Okay, so just chill. Remember, I always tell people, you can get a job and a promotion very fast, but you can also fail faster. You're only as good as the last thing you did in the company to stay in the job or to move ahead. But you could also be knocked off your perch very, very fast. So think hard before you brag. Think hard before you, walk around with a strut. Just be very careful. Humility, humility, humility. Intellectual humility, personal humility. Have some humility. You may be the smartest person in the room, but don't wear it on your sleeve.
I think the story you told about, your mother speaking to you once you'd gotten that promotion at Pepsi is something that a lot of people have read. And you spoke about this in your answer. Padma has actually mentioned that and said, as you keep mentioning about your mother, who knew the perfect art of giving you wings and still keeping you rooted, in the toughest of times, which thoughts that probably she gave to you? Can you tell us some thoughts that she gave to you or some values that helped you rationalize your dilemmas, kept you rooted, but still gave you wings?
It's interesting. She would always say, it's fine to be a big shot, it's fine to grow in your career, but your kids have only you as a mother. Your kids only have Raj as a dad. Don't forget that that's your primary responsibility. Anybody else can take your place as a senior executive or a CEO of PepsiCo, but you are the only mother or Raj is the only father. So don't forget your responsibility to your kids. Don't forget your responsibility towards the elders in the family, because I always lived in a multi-generational family. Don't forget your responsibility to the elders, because tomorrow you're going to be an elder yourself. Citizenship, she always said, what are you going to do for the country? What are you going to do for the state of Connecticut? What are you going to do for helping out during COVID? What are you going to do to help all the people who are without a job? So it was always pushing to say, how are you going to help the others? And so that was a good thing to constantly teach. The other thing is that generation of people lived very simply. They didn't have much. They never wanted much. Okay. They were not a consumption group at all. My mother hardly buys anything. My mother-in-law buys nothing. They're content with what they've got. We offer them anything they want. They just don't want it. And so you watch that very stoic group of people who have gone through a lot, have so little, want so little, and still care about their kids so much. You say that what's a great model to be a grandparent and model that sort of behavior for the kids. The other thing they would always teach was that my mother would say, go there and retain some of your values, but make sure you fit in too. Because you chose to go to the United States. Don't think the whole world is going to mold themselves to you. Keep your core, but also fit in. So all of these nuggets, you have to listen. I mean, the one thing she always said, which made me mad initially, but now I've accepted it. Any success, if you go to say, Mom, I've gotten promoted, she would say, what did you do to get promoted? I prayed for 4 hours, you got promoted, God gave you the promotion. You can all relate to it, right?
Absolutely.
God gave you the promotion. Can you just for 30 seconds just say, congratulations, good job? She'll say, no, God gave you the promotion. So go tell prayer at, the puja room. And so it was always that sort of, it's not your effort at all. Don't even think it's your effort. It's a divine intervention. So, those are the kinds of things we grew up with, Shivats. And I'm a product of all of that.
Absolutely. I think you also spoke briefly right now about, inhabiting two worlds, an Indian world and an American world. And also, the Prime Minister and the President of India and the US saying she's one of ours. So how do you make yourself part of many groups, sometimes, the kind of people or the culture that we have at work, maybe more urban, we may come from a, simple middle-class family, having different values. So how do you make sure that you fit into both worlds, and as you transition from your family to your career, that your world doesn't change, but you are actually comfortable in both worlds?
I think I'm a better person because of these dualities. I mean, all the way going back to the time I was a kid, the family had a foot on the brake, a foot on the accelerator. So that's how we grew up. I was born in India, grew up in America, so I was both Indian and American, right? I was always asked to trade off power and humility in judicious ways constantly. Crown in the Garage is a good example. Power and humility. I was an executive. I was a mother, a wife. So, the duality is what made me a better person. Both sides made me a better person. I talked about performance and purpose, managing for the long term and the short term. So again, I think life is about dualities. Life is about trying to manage multiple constituencies, multiple areas of emphasis. It's not a simple thing, I can't just say my life is about always having a foot on the accelerator, wearing my power on a sleeve, being an executive, only focusing on performance. Okay, if you did that, people say, I don't want to work for that person. I think dualities make you a richer person, make you a more wholesome person, and make you a person that people want to work for.
Absolutely. I think one of the paradoxes that you spoke about, and Vaishali has asked a question that, ma'am, you said you were raising kids is a combined responsibility of a man and a wife. But in India, we see women belonging to well-off families many times, or to better educated families, either don't want to go to work themselves or their families hold them back. How can we be part of the solution to this problem, that better educated women from more economically well-off families are actually in some ways held back more because they don't really need to go to work to support their families economically?
This is not about supporting families. I always say families are fragile. You can have a great family today, tomorrow something happens and the family falls apart. And so it's important that women are economically independent so they can stand on their own 2 feet if families go through any issues. First. Thing number 2, I think this is where men have to come to the table. when there's a husband and wife and, the in-law structure still creates problems in India. It's improving, but it still creates problems. In my case, my husband basically said, Indra's going to work, end of subject. That's what we agreed, she's going to work. There's no debate or discussion about it. My in-laws were super supportive, but had they raised any issues, Srivats, Raj would have said, I don't care what you raise as issues, she's going to work, end of subject. So he was always on my side. Half the problem is when your husband is not on your side. Then you're caught between your in-laws, your husband, and the woman feels trapped. So I think it's important that men realize that women too have hopes and dreams and aspirations. And again, if we, shake off this myth which says family is female and think about how both can contribute, and don't end up in a situation where you come back from work and the woman has to also cook and clean at home after putting a whole day at work. If you don't burden the child so much, the woman so much, it would be a better world. I mean, look at it this way. When you give birth to a girl child, you don't say, I gave birth to an unpaid laborer for life. Is that what you say? I don't think so. You say, I've given birth to a girl child. She can be anything she wants. She can be president, prime minister, CEO. She can be anything. Okay. A lot of mothers or parents will come to me and say, I have 2 daughters. I told them you can also be like Indra Nooyi. Okay. But give her the tools to be an Indra Nooyi or an Indira Gandhi or whoever it is. I don't care. Give them the tools and give them the wings to be all of that. Don't put anchors on their legs and then say, well, I told them they could be whatever, but I want them to be married and listen to their in-laws and be subjugated at home. Okay. Now, this is a change in society. I recognize it upsets old equilibriums. But I would tell you, I'm a product of great in-laws. They always would say, you need our help, we'll be there to help you, but don't give up your job. All granduncles of my husband, 95, 96-year-old people are still alive, still read the web about me and send me notes. And they say, we're so proud of what you're doing. I mean, I didn't pick that family. They just came along. Why can't more families be like that? And then those women who choose to take a break to have a kid, there should be a return ramp for them to come back to work. It doesn't mean their skills are gone. Maybe their resume should say, for 5 years, I did something quite different. And I acquired a whole set of different skills. Bringing up kids, little infants at home is not an easy task. I actually went through labor, gave birth to 2 kids and nurtured them till they were 5, and now I'm coming back to work. So I have an added dimension to my resume. And companies ought to say, she's graduated from the Jaipuria Institute, took a break for 3 or 4 years. Why shouldn't she be equally desirable in our workplace? Absolutely. So this whole return ramp has to be thought about very differently.
So it's about, how as family members, as husbands, as in-laws, as other family members, we can support women making the choice to work or to take a break. And if they do take a break, to make it easy for them to come back to the workplace, to realize the skills that they've done during that so-called break. It may not really be, because I know I have a young child and it seems that my wife does work that's harder than I do at work. So
absolutely, but encourage your wife to do whatever she wants to do. It's got to be the choice of the person to do what they want to do. Too often for women, we dictate what we want them to do.
Absolutely. So I'll take the last couple of questions over the next 5 or 6 minutes that we have left. Mm-hmm. I have a very interesting question from Rajkumar Oja. He's saying, can a person have complete control over one's growth or success, or will there always be randomness? Will you always have to accept randomness, that even if you worked hard for 4 or 5 years, things haven't gone your way, or something drastically good or bad has happened to you or to someone else?
There's a bit of luck associated with every job. Sometimes you're just in the right place at the right time. You lucked into a good boss. You lucked into a situation where there was a crisis and they needed your help. So look, hard work has a major role to play. Working for the right people has a major role to play in your success, but there is luck. I would say about 30% of everything you do is luck. Not luck in terms of there's nobody else for the job, so let's promote her. It's more luck because at that time when you came to the company was going through trouble. So you could really show your mettle and show how much you could contribute. Some people are never given that opportunity. And so, that's the luck of the draw, Srivat. Only thing is, don't switch jobs every 2 years, hoping to find the place which gives you luck. Luck means it's luck.
So at the end of the day, it's about being rooted and not say that I'll only be happy if I'm CEO, because you might put in all the effort and not, have that luck, and you still have to eventually live your life and enjoy the journey at every step. I
think of the pyramid. Think of companies as a steep pyramid, right? You're entering with 10,000 others. And by the time you get to the top, there's only 10 people reporting to the CEO, and one of them is going to become a CEO. A lot of attrition along the way, right? Absolutely. And remember, the higher up you go, you're either going to go up or out. If you don't retool yourself to go up, then you're considered a blocker. So there will be a lot of attrition along the way. So a lot of people have to accept just doing a good job and holding their job, as opposed to saying, I'm a failure if I don't move up.
Absolutely. So the last question I want to take is on leadership, for the young students that are out here. Piyush has asked, what advice would you give someone going into a leadership position for the first time? So for the first time, I'm going into a position where I'm managing people, I'm responsible for them, for their performance. What are some of the things that I should keep in mind?
Well, let me tell you what I look for people when they enter in, some sort of a leadership job. Are they investing the time to really understand the company, their job? Are they sort of zooming out from the job to 10,000 feet, looking to see how their job interacts with other people, then zooming back in to understand every detail of their job? To me, any leader should understand the details of every job, and then you can relax a bit. So do they zoom in and zoom out? Do they get to know the people on their team very deeply? Or do they just say, Srivat's Jaipuria, name, number, it's okay. I and Srivat's name, number, it's okay. Rather than, who is Srivat's? What makes him tick? What are his issues? What does he worry about? What is development area so I can work with him to improve him? So if you really understand every member of your team at a very deep level, it's a different sort of an interaction than those that say, I've got 5 people working for me. No, you don't have 5 people working for you. You have 5 phenomenal talent working for you. They go by the names of Srivat, Tanayan, and Binish, or whatever that is. Okay, you really have to think about their names, their backgrounds, what makes them tick as a team. You've got to understand people at that level. If you did that, it makes you a better leader than I've come in, I have to decide how to put points on the board so I can get promoted. Worst kind. Always trying to show up in meetings and show that they're the smartest person. Always trying to take credit for things they didn't do. Use the word we more than the word I.
Absolutely. I think, knowing people, interacting with people on the job is not just because you're a good person, but it's required by the job to be a good leader. I think that's the message that you're trying to give, that you have to eventually work with people, and that's what leadership is all about, and work with them as individuals, not only as the number of people reporting to you or the number of colleagues or
exactly right.
you have in your team.
Yep.
So it's been an extremely interesting session. I think there's been a lot to learn for each one of us, right? From the skills that you spoke about on creating a unique value proposition for ourselves, having creativity, confidence, communication, compass, coaching, as well as citizenship, to your own journey of success at Pepsi, to managing your family, to work, to making sure that family and work actually help reinforce and strengthen each other, to our responsibility to make sure that women that are part of our families and our organizations have the right to choose what they do at all times.
Yeah.
Ms. Nooyi, thank you so much for interacting with us over this 1 hour. I think we've had so many lessons that each one of us will take home. as a small token of our appreciation, we would like to give to you a green certificate, which we give instead of a bouquet when people come into our organization.
Oh, how nice.
So to make sure that we are environmentally sustainable as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Srivatsa.
Planted and will be taken care of in your name. So once again, I thank you very much for spending this time with us and our students over this last 1 hour. And the insights that you gave to us will remain with us forever. So thank you very much.
Pleasure, and my best to all your students and to you, Srivatsa.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.